Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Real Talk. It's Lucas here, and I hope that today's episode informs and inspires you to have your own real conversations. As always, today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Trivan, maker of trucks, trailers, and enclosure buildings tailored to your needs. Be sure to check them out at trivan.com. A huge thanks to them for sponsoring the show and making it possible. One other quick note before we get into today's episode is that if you are willing and able, if you could leave a review, preferably a 5-star one, on any of the podcast networks or platforms that allow for it, such as Spotify or Apple Podcast, that will be much appreciated as it helps get the word out there and lets people know what we're all about. So, with that in mind, on to the episode. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Real Talk podcast. We have a return guest on the show today who brought along his better half as well, and as did I in the hosting role, of course. So today we're talking about the topic of dating. Specifically, this guest wrote a book called Dating with Discernment, 12 Questions to Make a Lasting Marriage. And we're happy to welcome to the program Reverend Sam Andreades and his wife, Mary Kay. So thanks for joining us, guys. Appreciate it.
Hey, it's great to be back here talking with you, Lucas, and now also to meet with Elle as well.
Yeah, I should introduce my wife, Elle, back in the program. She's been on once before, and we thought it might be interesting to have you on for a discussion on dating.
We're such experts. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Not really, but we have the experts here, and we're excited to ask them.
Well, you must have been pretty good because you made one work here.
yeah.
True.
You got to marriage, so that was great.
Yeah, that is true. That is true.
Cool. We'll have to see about the lasting part, I guess.
Well, you've been married 2 years, right? You were telling me?
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. We've been married 33 years.
Okay, so they got a few years on us, so
Yeah.
we'll see what we can learn.
But it's great to have two different perspectives, sort of near the beginning and one that's kind of more experienced.
True.
Absolutely. Okay, well, why don't we start off? Your book has a good structure to it, and we'll get into that structure in a minute. But I think just for our listeners, so we've had a number of requests on this topic of dating over the years. Obviously, it's no secret that many Christians struggle with this issue, struggle to know what God's will is for them in this area. And that's the case whether you're starting out dating even in your teen years or into your 20s or 30s or whatever age you are, right? And whether you've dated nobody or you dated many people, it can be a challenge for everybody. So what we want to accomplish with this is just
it's interesting, Lucas, that you say that. It's a big issue, not just for Christian people or Christian young people, but for everybody, of course.
Absolutely.
I remember one time I was talking with Tim Keller, and he was telling me, when he kind of moved out of seminary into pastoral work, because when he was in seminary, he was always approached by guys, and when they had this look like, I need to talk to you, he knew it was always one of two questions. It was either, is God calling me into the ministry? Or the other question was always, should I marry this girl? He learned to expect that was always one of the two questions.
Yeah, it's it's a pivotal thing. Who are you going to spend the rest of your life with? It's a huge thing. So it's important to get it right. But
second most important decision you'll ever make.
Yes, of course, after your faith. Okay, how about we start off with this, just a basic question. What brought you to write a book like this? What was your interest? Was it a personal experience thing or your kids, or what led to this exactly?
Yeah, it was those two things. I've been a pastor for over 20 years, and for many years I was pastoring a young congregation in Greenwich Village. And so there was a lot of angst over relationships, a lot of need for counsel in that area. And just being a pastor, counseling people on marriages, I started to see what was really how the biblical counsel on what makes a marriage work was being neglected in a big way. And so, I've written these books about gender, and I realized that if I really wanted to serve the church strategically, I should go back to the beginning of a relationship when it was first starting and help people build on a good foundation. And so that was one of the impetuses for the book. The other one, as you mentioned, is my own kids. I had 2 kids who had gotten married, and I had 2 more who were just beginning to date. They were beginning to navigate these dangerous dating waters, the dangerous decision. And I really wanted them to have the best counsel I could muster. And so that was really what pushed me into saying I got to write this book. And I told my daughter actually that I didn't think she was going to get married until I had finished the book, which she didn't really like. But it ended up working out that way. Both of them kind of started using the book, and now my daughter is married and has a baby, and my son is about to get married next month. So I'm really grateful for that progression of events, and the book was part of that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, congrats. That's exciting for you guys. It's wonderful. You mentioned, and maybe I'm skipping ahead a little bit here, but obviously gender is largely defined in relation to the other gender. You talk about that a lot in the book. So that in mind, how much did Mary Kay assist in the writing of this book? I'm sure you had to bounce a few ideas off her, right?
Oh, much more than that.
Yeah.
You know, the reason I can understand relationships is because of Mary Kay and our marriage. It's been our marriage, it's been my tutor to understand these things, as well as the people that we've walked with and counseled with. But I would not have been able to, I would certainly not be able to write this book without what I've learned from Mary Kay and what we've learned walking together in life. So she's a big part of it. I'm really glad that she could join me today and be part of the conversation.
Yeah, I'm glad she can be here too. I think it'll be very valuable. Elle, did you want to ask the next question?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, when reading this book, you brought up different scenarios and a lot of helpful. And something that came to mind was, what do you think for specifically Christians is like the biggest challenge in dating, or what are some of the biggest challenges that specifically Christians face as they start dating and finding somebody that they want to marry?
Yeah, that's a good question for today. I feel like the biggest challenge is a lack of support from the culture for the value of marriage. Because marriage is so devalued, that's that people lose the goal of dating, and without a clear goal, it makes for inferior dating. And the breakdown of the family and the community means it's hard to get context for the people that you meet. If you ask a single person, what's the biggest challenge? Usually what they say is, oh, the hardest thing is meeting people. But I don't really think I'd said, I think it's really the challenge is about getting context for the people that you meet. I mean, there are ways to meet people and places to meet people, but getting the context for people so that you can move towards a strong foundation at the beginning of a relationship, that's what I would say is the challenge.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll jump ahead a little bit. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, it's a spiritual battle. Honestly, it's a time of uncertainty. I remember my 20s, and I think you have to be young to deal with the 20s. It's hard.
You have to be in your 20s
you have
to
to be in
deal
your
with
20s to
Do
deal
it
with
a
the
bit.
20s, or you're be in the 30s to deal with the 30s, the uncertainty of the whole thing. I remember people saying, oh, you're going on a date, have fun. And I remember thinking, okay, that's not exactly how I would explain my feelings. It's all there's a certain amount of excitement, but there's so much uncertainty that it's not entirely pleasant.
Well, yeah, it's a very vulnerable time.
Yeah.
Because there's always the looming question of rejection there. So it's a very vulnerable time of life.
Yeah.
But I hope that people can still have fun doing it. But it takes some doing some spiritual work there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a beautiful segue into how you start your book, which is how to break up with somebody, which is maybe a funny way to start a dating book. But you want to explain a bit why you started off with that?
Well, yeah, it's really because of the prevalence of dating apps, and
Hmm.
people using dating apps, because they're great, but they provide no context whatsoever. When you go into a dating app, you're starting from scratch. And for that reason, more breakups are likely in the process of moving towards a lasting relationship. It's just because you don't have any context. So you're starting without any kind of ability to kind of know any kind of background on a person. So that was one reason why it's important to get that out up front, and why I wanted to start that way. But really, you need to be able to say no in a dating relationship in order to get to a yes. Like, you need to be able to say no to a Mr. or Ms. Wrong in order to give a good yes to Mr. and Ms. or Ms. Right.
Yeah.
That's what I was.
Yeah, for me, the breakup was the breakthrough. I could not become a Christian until I was able to break up. For me, as a young woman,
Breakup is a great break. Why didn't you tell me that while I was writing the book? That would have been a great line.
My breakup was my breakthrough. I was 27 years old. I was attracted to Jesus. I'd read the Bible, coming from a cult background. I grew up in a cult, but I was attracted to Jesus. But the huge idol in my life, and it's so common, this, is relationship. There are no Christian men. If I become a Christian, I will never get married. I will never have happiness. I didn't think they were Christian men. I don't know. I will never get married, and therefore I have to settle for this guy that I'm dating. And when I was willing to say, I want to be with you, God, even if I never get married, that's the one thing I want. That was a breakthrough in my life. I thought I would never deal with sin again. After that turned out not to be the case, but it's a huge breakthrough. It was.
You actually deal with sin?
Yes, I do. That was I broke up with Mr. Wrong. It was like Jane Eyre's moment on the moors, where she falls in love with somebody. She finds out he's secretly married to the mad woman in the attic. And then she goes, oh my gosh, the love of my life, I have to break up with him because it's wrong. And she runs away to the moor. She's lying there in the middle of the night, all alone, destitute, no more love in her life, no future. And she has this moment with God. And if a woman doesn't, or a man doesn't have that, where God is the most important thing, you can't really go on and date properly. Once you have that, you're ready to date.
Mm-hmm. Well, we were talking about this last night. You were saying some advice you got from your dad or somebody about it. If you're dating, it only ends two ways, right?
Yeah, I don't remember who gave me that advice, but it was, you're either going to marry that person or you're going to break up with them. So make sure that you can do either of them before you get into a relationship with them.
Mm-hmm.
That's great advice.
Yeah, you don't really think about it when you start dating somebody new. You're just excited and whatever, but yeah.
So in that breaking up, then what is some of the advice you have for people if someone's listening and they're in a relationship and they're thinking, I don't know, this is the one. How do you go about doing that? And is there any advice you have?
Yeah, well, in the book, I actually give, I think, 7 steps to do it, because that's where it gets very practical to help people, because I know that question would be there. And a lot of the steps have to do with really showing respect to this person you're breaking up with. Like, it's as I said, it's a vulnerable time. People, need to take into account they're dealing with someone else made in the image of God. And even though there's disappointment, you can still express hope for the other person. So there's a lot of cowardly ways in which we could break up, a lot of ways that we could say, I just don't want to deal with it anymore. And then you just break off contact.
Yeah.
Or, you ghost someone, or you submarine them. And what I really kind of argue for is say, no, slow down and take some time to take stock of the other person, their strengths as well as their weaknesses. But it's important to be definite about the breakup, and to be able to kind of be able to give reasons. but also to be able to express hope for the other person. Okay, this is not working out. This doesn't mean that, there's no hope for either of us here. It's just, I believe that God has a different plan for us. And that's being sure to extend grace helps the dating process to be a means of discipleship for both of us, which is what it is,
Yeah, that's right. You get a lot of worldly advice that says, oh, you're worth more than this, believe in yourself. So, you should have a better man than this one. And that really doesn't work. A lot of people know deep inside they don't deserve better. But the thing is, God owns you. You don't have a right to to find that, this is part of his call for you. It's not about you deserving something. It's because God owns you, and to find the right person means often to break up. It's God's plan for you that you're going for, not like because somehow, yeah.
Well, yeah, I think I hear what you're saying.
It's a little different topic, maybe.
But yeah, you do need to recognize the value of what God's created in creating you.
That's right. That's what I mean. It's his value, and you don't have a right to just squander it on Mr. Wrong. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and I think often having a spouse can be an idol. I think probably implicitly for many of us, you think you deserve to be married at some point and find that happiness, right? That's a prevailing attitude for sure if people are at least dating. So yeah, sometimes that won't be God's plan, right? But often it is, and there's good ways to go about it. And that kind of ties into my next question, I guess. Before we kind of move forward throughout the rest of the book, I think we have to understand gender, this concept of gender, how men and women relate to each other in order to properly date well, and to understand how to do dating in a way that is biblical, in a way that honors God. So can you talk to us a little bit about the concept of gender? Obviously that's a very big buzzword today. A lot of people say it's socially constructed. What does the Bible tell us about gender for men and for women?
Yes. Well, yeah, it's not a little thing. Gender is something very real. I would say in the Bible's terms, it might not use the word, but what it's referring to is no small thing. It's a big part of the divine image that we are. When God said, let us make in our image, he made us male and female. And so that a big constituent of what it means to express the divine image. And it's physical in our bodies, but it's not just physical, because we're body and soul. So it's a calling to us in the way in which we relate to one another. So that's very important. And that's why the New Testament makes a big deal about it in romantic relationships.
Yeah. Okay. All right. You talk about this concept of guarding the goal a lot in this book. Can you explain a little bit what it means to guard the goal? Is that something that's more for women to think about in terms of guarding the goal, in terms of like a physical, sexual nature? Or is this a concept that applies to both men and women?
Oh, I would say it applies to both.
Yeah.
It certainly can apply to women, if they're being pressured to engage in physical intimacy before the commitment of marriage. That's one application. But really, I think it's important for both men and women to recognize the value of what God has created in them.
That's it.
Yeah. I mean, when God created you, he created an amazing thing.
Yeah.
And that value is reaffirmed in Christ's redemption. If you understand what Christ did for you, if you're a believer, then you begin to realize that you're valuable, that God, he likes you.
Yeah.
He likes you. And dating well means not short-circuiting that value. So you really need to know the love of Christ. And what I talk about in the book is the date who always shows up. The way in which, we can do what we've been talking about, guarding the goal, being able to break up. It all can happen if you have a greater love in the wings. You know, if you have someone else that values you, you can respond well in dating. And if you realize that how he values you,
Yeah.
then you can see yourself as he sees you, and that's what guarding the gold is all about.
Yeah, this is what I was trying. I think I jumped the gun. This is what I was trying to say, that God's value of you
Yeah,
is
when
the
you were saying,
reason that
oh,
you break up. It's the
he
reason
owns you.
that you can go forward and date, because of his love for you, not some kind of self-worth that you drum up. That's it.
Yeah, and that's a comfort, obviously, for any of us, but particularly if you're going through a tough time of singlehood and you want to be dating, you want to find somebody, you know that God has given you that value, and he has a plan for that time in your life as well. Okay. Do you want to ask another question? You want me to keep going?
Keep going. Yeah, you're doing great.
Okay, right on. I'm doing great. Awesome. Way to support me. Way to provide me rest. I'll feel good. All right. Well, okay, I could get into that right now. You know what? Yeah, why don't we do that? So you talk a lot about security, the man providing security for the woman. That's a big aspect of what it means to be a man. And then the woman providing the man rest. These are two big themes and concepts throughout the book. Can you explain to us a little bit how you came to these conclusions, so like some scriptural basis for this, and then give some examples of how this actually works out in terms of someone's dating life?
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's one of the three, security and rest. It's one of the three great asymmetries of gender. And it's very important in dating because it's usually the first point of connection for a dating couple. So it's important. It is that of which finding your soulmate is the world's caricature. They're getting at a truth there, but the truth really is about finding the one who, for a woman, is able to secure you, and for a man is able to give you rest. And it varies with each couple because God kind of varies in creating us. So it differs from each couple. And that's part of the adventure, is finding that. But what you're going for in your dating is you're going for that at last moment for Adam, or that naming moment for Eve. Those two experiences of Adam and Eve in the foundation is what initially brought them together. So that's what we were going for. And as I said, it's going to be different. Originally, what I kind of tell this in the book, for me, is Mary Kay offering her lap to me when I was so tired. We were sitting up at the cloisters, and she gave me a place to lay my head down. I mean, literally gave me rest. And that was the beginning for me. Like, this is a woman, it really impressed me, who was very much concerned about and was very much able to give me what I needed for rest.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say, darling?
Well, I think the biggest thing that you notice is, can you be yourself with that person? That's the most obvious thing. Can you feel comfortable being yourself? Do you feel, well, after the initial discomfort of the first date, couple of dates are over, do you start to be able to talk? I can think of two dating situations, people I'm very close to, where there was two fine people, wonderful Christian people, tried to date, and they couldn't talk to each other, and it's frustrating, and it just wasn't working. And then a year later, in each case, they were married to, they were engaged to other people, and talking. So there was a comfort there, even though they were fine, Christian brother and sister, they couldn't make it work. So that's a big one.
Yeah. Can you give an example? Like, he's asking how it practically worked for us, where was there something that made you feel secured?
There are a lot of examples, and some of them Sam talked about in the book, but another one I can think of was, it was maybe our second real date, and I went to see his apartment on the Upper West Side, which was not an entirely safe area at that time. And he was
This is in New York City.
Sam was a musician at the time, and he lived in a horrific single room occupancy hotel. Okay, it was filled with drug addicts and prostitutes, and I don't know what all was going on. There was a common bathroom on the hall. I walked into the common bathroom, and the mirror was this triangular shard of glass about like this big, sitting on top of the sink. It was horrifying. And so I'm thinking, oh, this is terrible. Who am I dating? What is going on here?
Is this a positive example or
Yeah,
a negative
it
example?
gets better. So then I went into his little room that he could afford on what he was making there. And it was complete, this tiny one room thing.
It's pretty small.
He had, it looked like the inside of a houseboat. He had rigged up a lock for himself with these metal bars and clamps. And then he had, everything was hung on the wall. It was very ship shapes, like there, the little guitar area. And then there was the tiny kitchen with the microwave, everything hanging in its place on the wall, tiny love seat, everything in its place and a place for everything. And then he had this alarm system he'd rigged up for his room with things that you could buy back in those days at Radio Shack, with a tiny cassette player in those days. So with a little
Switch.
alarm, a switch, so that if somebody opened the door, the switch would go off and it would set the cassette
recorder.
player off. And the cassette player would have him sounding very threatening. And when it said, "Hey, who's there? Get away from my door."
It's like
One more,
hopeful.
if you enter, one more step and you'll regret it. That was all of it. And I just laughed and I thought, oh my God, this is hilarious. This guy has made he has organized, he has made order out of chaos in this situation. And all of a sudden I felt at peace. I felt like, well, here's a guy who could take a crazy situation and make it safe.
Wow.
There you go. Okay, that was a good story. I
Yeah.
like that example. Pretty extreme, but yeah, it's interesting, right? Because so on the guy's side, if you're at rest, that allows you to be comfortable, that allows you to be yourself, and for the woman, of course, if you are secure, then you are both those things as well. So it feels true. Are there other examples biblically other than Adam and Eve in your research that you came across where you see this paradigm of rest and security and whatnot?
Oh yes, I see it there. Well, in the narrative and in the instruction, but in the narrative parts, for example, I do go into the beginning of Judges. The book of Judges about the need for good leadership and what happens to society when that goes downhill. And so it's a downward spiral through the book of Judges of the Israelite society getting worse and worse. And so the best kind of leaders and the best relationships you see at the beginning, because it has a lot to do with women as well as men in the book. And so you've got the model couple at the beginning, which is that's Othniel and Aksa.
Mm-hmm.
And you see really the way they come together, and it's meant to be, I think, by the author, kind of the ideal. And what you have there is exactly the story of someone, the guy securing the woman by taking Kiryat Arba, the city that could not be taken, and securing the land for her.
Yeah.
And her in making a place of rest by making a home for them.
Yeah.
In a dry land. She gets this land from her father.
Yeah.
And she makes it work. She makes a place of rest, a place of home for them.
That's right.
And that's a beautiful example.
Yeah. She marries this conquering guy. She gets there. It's a desert. Aksa. So Aksa is adventure girl. She says, okay, all right, you've given me this kind of dry land. All right, I'm going to go to my father and say, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to make a home here with my husband. Can I have the springs? I need the springs. Can you give me the springs? So she's taking initiative also to make it happen, make their family happen in the new land.
Yeah, and for example, if you go to the instruction in the New Testament, where Paul is writing to Titus, and he says that the women should be working at the home. It doesn't, and the word he uses doesn't mean like they're always in the home, like working at home, but working at the home. That is making a place of rest. And homemaking is one important way of making rest.
Yeah.
It's not the only way, and
Yeah.
it's pretty much downplayed these days, but it's actually a pretty important way of for a woman to give rest.
Yeah. Yeah. Those were specifically young women, but it is an undervalued thing that we do. And
Absolutely.
interestingly, for Aksa, going to a desert place and finding springs was part of homemaking in a way. So
Mhm.
That's
finding the thing. Yeah.
Do you find in your pastoral work that people don't realize that this is what they want as men and women? Because we were reflecting back on it,
Mhm.
and like we certainly didn't have the terminology of rest and security. I mean, but I think intuitively, I probably
Yeah.
knew that a woman wanted security, that you're looking for
For sure.
strength, but I don't think I know I didn't put this much thought into it in terms of
Well, and I think I didn't put much thought into like how I'm providing you rest until even until we read this book. I was like, am I doing that? Like,
yeah.
just got to make sure. But even when we started dating, like working in the home, that was like a future thing for me. I really wanted to be a wife and mother.
Teaching piano
But-
outside the house.
Yeah, I was teaching piano, and I was in school actually when we first met,
Yeah.
and had no idea when I was going to meet my husband. So I truck him along, trying to get as far as I could. And then, I knew that if I met somebody, I would stop or wait. But yeah, I think now after having been married for a couple of years, I'm really enjoying that myself and feeling a lot more secure in my role as a wife.
That's great.
Yeah, just because I think that is innate. Like that's just what what God gave me to want to do because I'm a woman.
Yeah, and I appreciate the rest that it provides too. Just coming home to after work. Home it's not just a house, it's all a cliche, but it is true. It's just a nice place of rest where you can just be yourself. And I mean, we have a
Yeah.
1-year-old daughter, so the relaxing is only after she goes to bed, but usually as long as she doesn't wake up. But yeah,
How old is she now?
she's 1, and we got our second on the way in about what, 5-6 weeks.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm so happy for you.
Congratulations. That's
Congratulations.
wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So
So
you're starting to enter into the thick of it now. That's neat.
Yeah.
Yes.
So sorry, that was a long way of saying, have you seen other people in your pastoral work when they're dating? Are people aware of these patterns, do you find?
Sometimes if people are smart, they intuit it, like you're saying that you were feeling like, wow, I didn't have a language for this, but this is what it was.
Yeah.
I think people do intuit it. It's much better actually if you kind of consciously like realize this is what I'm going for.
Yeah.
Because then it prevents you from making some mistakes sometimes or some bad decisions.
Yeah.
But it's that's why it's a shame that I feel like the biblical counsel is really lost these days.
Yeah.
But it can be very helpful to people.
Well, and it used to be, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, but very often it goes on sometimes without people even realizing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It used to be that you would also talk with your church community and your family about what is going on and who you're interested in, or it was a very official thing, like the whole courting process. They would come to your house and know your family as well as they knew you. So it was just easier or more accepted, I guess, to be able to ask somebody advice or what they thought of somebody. But now I think it's actually a big secret. Like you don't want your parents to know that you're dating somebody until you know for sure, or you have a good feeling about it, or whatever. But yeah, it would be better if we just all like asked, the people that are wiser than us for tips or advice, or what do you think of this person? I think it would save probably a lot of heartache. But
Yeah, you're very adamant on that in the book about meeting the family first, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, at one point I stopped the book. It's like, okay, stop everything, interlude. And I'd say for people who really want a rule, it's like you want one rule. And I avoid rules in the book because people are very different. And I just find the way that the Bible approaches it as more about principles. And I give plenty of examples so you can see the principles in action, but I avoid trying to come down with a lot of rules for people.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that's helpful. But in that one place, I'm willing to say, okay, you want a rule? Here's a rule. Meet the family.
Even if they're terrible, which they sometimes are.
Yeah. Well, you made me do that.
That's information too. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, because because who we are, for better or for worse, is in large part because of the family from which we arise. So you just know so much from looking at people in the context of their family, and whatever family is available. I mean, we have a lot of times it's not maybe it's not possible. Maybe a family lives really far away, or it's a broken family, or something. But as much as you can, siblings, parents, grandparents, relatives, as much as you can, meet the people that have been those factors that have shaped the person that you're considering marrying, or the good person that you love.
Yeah, from both perspectives, right? Both to learn how they are in their family dynamic, and then also for the family to kind of vet the other person.
Yeah. Growing up, that was something my dad really drilled. I have 3 sisters, so he's really drilled this into us, was to watch, if you're interested in somebody, watch how their dad treats their mom. And that will really tell you something about that guy's character. And I think that's really true. And I did keep that in the back of my mind always when I was dating. And yeah, just good piece of advice.
It's both. It works, as Mary Kay says, in both directions. You could see there are things that you really love about this person. You begin to see why. It's like, wow, I can kind of see how this maybe arose out of their family.
Yeah.
But also you're going to be able to if you're looking carefully, you'll be able to see the problems with which you're going to be helping your spouse for the next several years.
Yes, I might not have married you if I'd used that criteria, how your father treated your mother. But
yeah, that's a good example. It's not set in stone.
No, but seeing them
you can see them helped you realize where I might have wounds, or challenges or difficulties in loving.
That's right.
Just because that's what I've come out of.
It was a shortcut to knowing you. Yes.
And those were the problems that, you helped me with.
Yes.
For the first years of our marriage.
Yeah. So having a bad family in your past, bad family dynamics does not mean that's not destiny. It's information,
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we had that too, right?
Mm-hmm.
How you relate to your parents, obviously that's huge, both mother and father. That impacts how your dating relationship can go, and then even into marriage, like the first few years too.
Yes.
Work through that.
Yeah. And I find, like, in our situation, that my communication style with my dad growing up wasn't going to work with my future husband. It wasn't quite what it needed to be to work, like have a lasting marriage, really. So I think that's something that we've really had to work on.
Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense.
Great example.
But you were still very firm on meeting the family, because even just for fun, I'll share this little story. But so we had gone on one date, and then the second full date, and I was full of a lot of confidence. I thought for sure this is going swimmingly. There is no way she will turn me down. And I said, okay, I don't think I said I love you quite at that point, although it was not too much longer. But it's okay.
Wait, this is the second date?
This was date 2, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
What do we gone on a long walk or something?
Yeah.
What we did. Yeah. So park. But anyways, we get to the end of the trail or whatever. I said, okay, like, would you be my girlfriend? And you said, no, not really. Like, well, you gotta meet my family first. You gotta meet my family first.
Good for you. Good for you, Elle. Well done.
Yeah.
Thank you. He's a little sensitive about it now, I think, but I liked reading that in this book because it made me feel like, okay, I did like stick to a good rule there, and
Uh-huh.
now he can stop harping me about it.
Yeah, it all worked out. Got the blessing, and we went on from there.
Yeah, I think a week later we were dating, and he had met my family, and it was all fine. But yeah,
Yeah, I
Okay.
was really trying to counteract the uh, feeling that you were expressing, like, oh no, don't tell the family until you're planning the wedding.
yeah,
Because you
Right,
know,
don't get them excited.
don't get them involved. They might say something wrong or something. And that's part of it too. You know, you do have to talk to your family about what makes you comfortable, what makes you uncomfortable. That's part of the process, but it's so valuable and so needed. Um, so I'm glad you did that.
Yeah.
Well, we're
They
so.
did.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mary Kay.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say we're so individualistic as a culture that like you get another way to say this is like your family almost helps you date a little bit in a way. They vet a little bit, right? But that's super weird to think about in our North American context. It's not very natural.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, they're the ones who know you so well.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, even if you know they don't always give the best advice, they know you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
They really know you. So
Yeah.
it's good to listen. You know, you want to, at that stage, you want to honor your parents, not necessarily obeying your parents, but
Yeah.
honoring your parents. That is, you make them weighty in your life, which is the commandment. It doesn't mean you always do everything they say at that point, but you do give it weight, and you use discernment with that, but really value what they're saying.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Okay. Why don't we move on to, so we touched on security, we've touched on rest. I think we understand that paradigm fairly well now. In chapter 6, you talk about can he take charge for us versus can she esteem me? So can you dive into both of those? Both first maybe from the male perspective and then from the female perspective.
Um, yes. So that's yeah. So you're coming to another of the asymmetries.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
What does it mean
and
to take charge in a dating aspect?
yeah. Well, yeah, there are a number of different ways that you can begin to operate in this way and see if you can do this for each other. Um, and I think that in the first way is to have the courage to ask a girl out, which is
Sure.
something actually that you have to say these days to guys, is to, you know,
Yeah.
you need to ask her out. And that means that's a way of kind of leading in the relationship. And that's kind of important, you know, because it's terrifying to ask a girl out. You really don't know what the answer is going to be. And so to even do that is a great step of manhood, to be able to say, hey, I like you. I would like to spend time with you. Can we go out together? And you want to be able to do that clearly with her. Rather, like as guys, we want to take, you know, the easy way and non-threatening way by saying, well, you know, can we hang out sometime? Or
Yeah.
some other ambiguous expression, which leaves the girl wondering, am I being asked out, or is this, you know, a study session? You know,
Help me with
but
that.
yeah, sure.
yeah, so I really have encouraged young guys to sort of take the step, say, look, I'm putting myself out there. I would like to go on a date with you. And that's a big beginning. I think that's that asymmetry in operation there. And if you do that, you know, that's the first step in securing a woman. If she knows that you're going to be able to take that kind of responsibility, um, that's a first step. It might seem like a small step. There are many other steps to come, but that's a good first step.
Mhm. Why do you think because from your perspective, you think guys have a harder time doing that today? I would think it's always been somewhat of a terrifying thing to do. Is
It
it
has been, but it's worse today because of the lack of examples and the lack of emphasis, the devaluing of gender. And because it's been devalued, you don't have men aspiring to take responsibility in things. And so they are not growing up with that, as it's certainly not getting it from our larger culture. Hopefully they're getting it in their family, but I don't know. I just think it's the breakdown of gender that makes it harder even.
I've also heard that men are more out of practice with that. Like, it used to be that there would be dances or like just opportunity social events where you could go and, ask a woman to dance with you or put your name on her dance card or something like that. But there's just not as many opportunities to do that nowadays, especially face to face when everything's online, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's true.
That's
And
right.
it's not society's expectation.
yeah.
So
Yeah, it was always terrifying, but at least in earlier times you had your brothers saying, okay, I did it. Now go ask her.
Mhm.
You had more encouragement because everybody was doing this scary thing.
Yeah, yeah. If she turned
yeah,
down your brother, maybe she wouldn't turn down you.
Right.
yeah,
Uh,
we've lost that rite of passage.
Yeah.
yeah, that's true. That is true. Okay, so so from the male perspective, after you take that initial step, you ask the girl out. She says yes. You're going on a date. You're working through a few dates. You're getting to know each other. What are the other ways that a guy can show that he is in charge and can take charge? And is it just continually taking the next step in the relationship?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, is taking stock of the relationship and being able to kind of at certain points um, offer the assessment of where they're at. I talk about in the book the kind of La La Land experience where, in this very popular movie, was a beautiful movie, but it was like typical male failure, typical gender failure, where the girl is like, she's begging for clarification on where the relationship is. And she says, "Where are we?" And they're sitting in a park, and he goes, "Well, we're in a park," like he makes the joke.
He said,
And
then he says, I
which
don't
is so
know.
typical. I mean, that was great. The dialogue was so real. And she was like, "No, no, really, really, where are we?" And she's crying out for some direction, from some guidance. And Ryan, what's his name?
Ryan Gosling.
Ryan Gosling is just like, "Well, I don't know. Exact wrong answer."
Yes.
He
We
said
need
what
to.
the relationship needed was direction at that point.
Yeah, and then she goes off to Paris and they break up. And I'm thinking, have you guys not heard of Skype? What is wrong
Yeah.
with
It's like, yeah, they're obviously like the love of their lives. They've met the love of their lives and they can work it out.
they can't
If
manage.
there's some direction there in the relationship, and there isn't. And so they break up and there's this tragedy, and
Disappointing ending in that movie.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it made for that great montage where what could have been,
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
that's like another providing direction in the relationship. And these days people are so afraid. There's such a fear of toxic masculinity,
Yeah.
that people are fearful of being overbearing. And you can do this without being overbearing. It doesn't mean you always have to make every decision all the time, but you have to provide key direction at times.
Yeah. It's a gospel partnership that you're going to have in the
That's
end.
right.
So this isn't about the man making a schedule for every minute of your date. That might be a sign that you're
Overbearing.
dating a narcissist. But
That's a good point.
at those key moments, an overly controlling man, that would be a red flag, actually. But a man who's willing to say, I like you, and
I like you enough to take initiative.
I like you enough to take initiative and then listen to you, hear what's good for you, make sacrifices for what's good for you. I think a key way that Sam was manly for me in our dating is that he stopped us from going too far. So that is not the woman's responsibility. And I saw him sacrifice for my benefit, sacrifice
You
immediate.
mean going too far physically?
Physically, I saw him sacrifice what he wanted for the benefit of the relationship, and that, like doing that in the relationship. And the other thing I saw him do was repent. And so I'm evaluating him, whether I can let him lead, whether that's a safe thing to do. So I'm watching what he's doing. I'm watching how he's trying to take initiative for us, but also listening. I'm going, is he going to listen to me? Is he going to be domineering? I'm evaluating.
Yeah, he's being a true leader. He's being humble as well, right?
Yeah, and when I saw him repent, and I would see him pray and go, oh, we're doing the wrong thing. I'm sorry, we're doing the wrong thing. Then I thought, I think even if Sam is wrong, God will get him. So I'm going to be okay with him. So I'm evaluating him as a leader during this time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good the way you say that, honey, because that is what a woman needs to be doing in this asymmetry. She, when a healthy marriage is working properly, a woman wants to esteem her husband.
Yeah.
Wants to promote him to that place of leadership. That's what's healthy. That's a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
But in the dating stages, you're not committed to doing that. You're deciding whether you want to do that.
Yeah.
Whether this is a man to which you want to esteem.
Yeah.
And that you need to think about that. You need to look at these signs or these flags and try to decide that the best you can from what you're seeing.
Yeah. So the more the man leads during the dating process, the more the woman will be able to esteem him. And the more
a narcissistic man can make create a date, create an interesting romantic date, but he won't listen to you and he won't be contradicted. And so it doesn't keep working. And if you have to be willing to observe those things. Yeah.
Yeah. And we should be always, as from the man's perspective, we're trying to build up respect in order to make that esteeming possible.
Yeah.
Which is always should be our aspiration. It should be our daily objective. And tell you, it's easier to do during dating when you're really motivated.
Yeah.
But then also during marriage, where after you've gotten the prize, you need to it's our job, it's our place to be working in a way to build up that respect.
How do you know from the man's side when you're evaluating a woman if she will be capable of esteeming you?
Oh, I think you can tell. I think you can look at the way and what if she is able to respond in a way, if she really desires to be putting me forward. As we talked about already, kind of looking at the family dynamics, but also having experience with her. And you can tell, a man can feel it.
Yeah. Sarcasm, they say, is a big red flag. There's some, sometimes you can address it. I mean, we've had instances where I've been sarcastic and Sam has said, that actually hurt me. And so there's things you can address.
Well, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. A woman has to evaluate whether you can see God's plan for this person. Whether you start to see, now Christian marriage is more than the sum of the parts. If you wait for the perfectly formed man, you will probably not get married. But God has something he's doing in your husband. And if you can begin to get a vision for that, not that you're going to mold him into this incredible, like, breadwinner or something like that, not like for power, but you can see the God vision for him.
Good.
You start to get a vision for that. Like, I can get behind him and help him be what God intends for him to be. Can I hitch my wagon to the vision? Or can I empower the vision, not hitch my wagon to it, but can I see it and can I help it?
Yeah. follow him into battle type thing, right? Like you're,
Exactly. Can I believe for him? And honestly, none of this made sense before I met the right guy. Honestly, a lot of this doesn't make sense until it starts to click the right person.
Yeah, that's a great point, though. What you're looking for in a dating relationship, especially if you're younger, is the raw material.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
you don't usually meet a guy who's, fully formed, fully operational Death Star. It's usually it's in process, but you're squinting your eyes and you're trying to see, can I see what this guy is becoming?
Yeah.
And same on the other side. Can you squint your eyes? Can I see what this woman, the direction that she's on, the road that she's on? Both of you are looking for the raw material there.
It is a lot more about direction. That's why when I saw him repent, I thought, well, if something is not present in his character now, he's moving towards it. That was precious to me.
Thank you.
Yeah. That makes sense. Okay, that kind of naturally leads into like the next section about mission and empowering the mission. So this, at least the way it's described, at least the way I understand it, is very for sure countercultural in today's day and age in terms of the man has kind of a mission, or well, the family has a mission, the marriage is a mission.
That's a mission, yeah.
But the man is he's kind of tasked with finding that mission. Does he have a mission for us? Is part of the title of that chapter.
Yeah.
Apprehending the mission.
Exactly. Apprehension and comprehension of the mission. And then for the woman's side, how can she empower the mission? Can you talk again, just some of the biblical basis for knowing that these are important questions to ask during the dating process?
Well, sure. It is a very important question. Like you're saying, it's countercultural because people tend to think, the relationship is about the relationship, but it's not.
Yeah.
And the biblical basis, if you're asking for that, I mean, one place that you can go is right back to the beginning. The first man and the first woman met in the midst of mission.
Yeah.
Because of the mission, actually, because of Adam trying to take dominion, as he was told to over the creation intellectually. He was trying to do taxonomy. And it is in the midst of that mission that the woman came forth. Because there wasn't one that was found for him as he was naming the animals.
Yeah.
And as he was trying to bring order to the garden, there was help needed. So it was actually there's a goal to the first marriage, and in the same way, God always has a goal and a purpose for our relationships. The relationship should never be just about itself. And I remember I had a friend who was a Christian. He got married. And I remember him asking me, they were a few months in, they had been married for a few months. And he said, Sam, how do you prevent things from getting stale? Like we've gotten into this routine, where we get up in the morning, we do the dishes. And he was like, but how do you maintain life in the relationship? And I remember being so puzzled, like, what is he talking about? I realized I thought more about it is that he didn't have a mission. There wasn't a mission to what they were doing.
Yeah.
And so of course it's going to get stale. And I think I say in the book, any relationship that is about itself, just about itself, will eventually go sour. So it's important. It's going to be different for different couples because God has different purposes for us.
Yeah.
It's very important to find.
Yeah. A couple of things about that. Finding the mission is very collaborative because it's a mission merge of two people. And so there is a leadership of the man, but there's quite a lot of prophetic. We see women in the Bible being prophetic and sometimes bringing the necessary information to find the mission. So it is very much a gospel collaboration of the man and the woman. And it's been that way in our marriage, very, very definitely. I mean, one of my quests in our marriage has been to find like
the work
that Sam should be doing and then I should be doing. So I've had a real drive to find this mission. And so it has been actually very collaborative, even if there's a certain leadership element that Sam has. We've done it together. Everything we've done has been very collaborative and together. And the mission, it's very important to note, is not the guy's job, right? Mission is part of the kingdom of God.
Okay.
It's God's mission. It's not really the man's mission. It's not the woman's mission. It's coming to both of them from what God is doing in the kingdom.
Well, yeah, I would say that for the man to apprehend the mission well, he is taking into account the wife's gifting, as well as his
That's
own.
right.
It should not just be to use both of your talents in the best way you can, best possible way, sort of thing. Which for the guy, for sure, I would think includes his work. No?
Yes. Yeah. But it's
Sorry, did you have a question?
It includes his work, but it's not. It's more than that as well.
Yeah.
It's more than any one particular job.
Well, it could be the job.
A job could be part of it. A job could be part of it, but yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess I'm just like thinking about that. I'm wondering if that's something that you have to organically kind of stumble upon, or if that's something that you should explicitly talk about and try to decide between a few things, like to pick one main thing you're going to work on as a married couple. Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering.
Both.
Well,
both.
It's like what you were saying before, Elle. You can intuit these things. It can work out that way, but it's much better if you are aware that this is an important dimension of your marriage.
That's true.
If you realize that, then you are periodically talking about, well, what is the mission here? It helps you make certain decisions that you have to make as a couple if you're kind of guided by the mission. And that doesn't mean that it's easy. So I think what you're talking about, saying, well, do you have to stumble upon it? You're kind of picking up on how it's actually it's a lifelong thing, getting a mission.
Yeah.
I mean, some people know it very early on, but it's a process. It can be a process. What I just want to encourage people to do is to be about the process. To be conscious and purposeful and directive about what it is, even if you're saying, well, we're in the process of seeking what that is. That's what's important.
Yeah, and some are more obvious than others. Like I can think of being a family that does missions in, Papua New Guinea or something like that's quite a clear mission for your family. But if that's not what God has called you to, maybe, there are some less obvious things that could be.
That's right. If you have a construction business, there is a part of taking dominion and creating community and creating home that you are doing as part of your business. That's one example. So it's very varied mission, a combination of things. And then there's different seasons in your life. We just had a season where we said, what is God doing with us now? Is it A, B, or C? And we said, well, we will try 3 different projects and see how they go. So we actually prototyped as a way to 3 different projects to see which one of them God was blessing, which one of them. So we were specifically trying to figure out the mission for this next phase that way. And it helped that we knew this was important, finding the mission.
And for example, I could bring up another scenario. Sometimes a man and a woman might each have a very successful career on their own. So they come together. And then I would say the process of, as Mary Kay calls it, a mission merge, is a process of working hard to bring those two together. And you have to work harder if you're both sort of have these different directions, and they both have these I know couples in New York have very high powered, each of them have very high powered careers. How do you bring that together? I would say you gotta really be seeking God about that. Because if you don't, there's just this danger of, you go on your separate ways, and the marriage is not what it needs to be.
Okay, so if I understand this well, I'm going to try to summarize this, and you let me know what you think. But the overall mission would be to use your talents and abilities the best you can to serve in God's kingdom, both the man and the woman in the relationship. And then in that serving, there will be different phases and stages and seasons of your life where you'll be able to serve in different ways. Is that fair?
Yeah, and not just you and your wife, but your children as well.
Of course. Yeah.
Like for us, for example, that I kind of discerned that our one of our thrusts of our family was cultural engagement, was to be able to engage with the culture and to be able to build a bridge in between the church and the culture. And that was part of my thrust. I was discerning when Mary Kay came along, you know, it was using her gifts as well. And so that became like a theme of our family. It's cultural engagement. And so, for example, you know, when Pokemon came along with our kids, we were like, you know, this is not going to be a craze. It was a big craze at the time. We're like, we're not going to go into for this one. Then when my kids were growing up, excuse me, Star Wars was a big thing. It was a really kind of taking the culture, and we had to say, well, how are we going to deal with this? And so we decided as a family to make a Star Wars Christian study guide. And so we would like have these study questions that you could watch the Phantom Menace and you could ask questions about. And my son, who was a budding artist, you know, did the cover art. And, you know, I had some people in my church who were like, why do this? You know? And I was like, well, this is us. This is our family mission to engage with the culture, and the culture is Star Wars. So we made it a family project. And I was really happy with that. You know, it was something we were doing together. It was part of the mission.
Mm-hmm.
I will say I picked up on that a little. I see that now, having had read the book, because I said to Luke, wow, I'm impressed. Like, this guy's got a lot of, like, his finger on the pulse of all the like movies and popular artists. I liked all the references that you made to songs and movies and stuff. So I see that now.
Well, thank you. That comes from the family mission.
Okay.
Not everybody would be into that, but
I appreciated it.
Yeah, that's cool.
thank
It
you.
makes sense, I guess, because the family being the basic building block of society is where we can have the most impact, obviously, as husband and wife in our local families. And yeah, like you say, culture building is a great example of a mission for a family to have.
Absolutely.
Who better to engage the culture than the family, right?
Absolutely. And, you know, whatever it is that the Lord is giving you and directing you in a mission, it is so powerful when the two of you are aligned in purpose. And it is amazing when you have a whole family that's aligned. It rocks the world.
Yeah. People think of homemaking as, I don't know, doing the dishes or something, but it's actually remaking the world. It's renewing the face of the earth, remaking Eden in a little way.
Cultural mandate.
That's what it actually is.
Yeah. No, I mean, it makes sense. Like, so you mentioned a construction business earlier. So I own, along with my business partner, a construction supply business in the door world. But of course, in a business setting, you have value, or you have your core values, you have your mission statement, all this kind of stuff. And it's all, some people might think, oh, that's kind of hokey pokey, whatever, but it matters. It matters a lot. It helps everybody know that they're moving in the same direction. You know where you're going, you know how to act while you're on the path. And I don't know, I think for a family setting too, that's really important to lay that out. I know for us, I don't think we've ever thought about like a family mission. I mean, our family's kind of just getting off the ground now.
Yeah, true.
But it's an interesting side concept, I think, to come out of this book as well for us. So thanks for bringing
good. Well, there's a reason God brought the two of you together, a very specific reason. So you should just go to him and start asking, like, what is the reason why the two of us together rather than others? There's a reason for it.
Yeah.
True. Yeah. Go to him with prayer. Do you have other questions you want to ask there? Kind of making our way towards the end of the book here.
Yeah. I mean, this is kind of a random one-off question, but did you design, like, did you create this book for a specific purpose, like for a pre-marriage class or something like that? Like, I'm thinking of the book that we read during our classes, and I thought maybe this one would be a really interesting one. I wish we had read this when we were dating.
We did the Tim Keller one.
Yeah, we did the Tim Keller one. But was that in mind when you were writing this book?
Well, yeah, Tim's is pretty good.
Yeah.
I think it's sold a few copies.
Yeah. No, it's good. But yeah, I think it would make a good study guide. People have made it a study guide for engagement counseling. I use it now for premarital counseling. I mean, there are several couples I'm doing engagement counseling with right now. And, you know, I have them read a couple chapters, then we talk about it. I have them mark things that they like, things that they dislike.
Yeah.
And it's a great fodder for discussion to bring up the issues, the important issues to discuss. So
For sure. Yeah, I
yeah,
think for me, it might have been more helpful than, yeah, I think you kind of mentioned at the beginning of the book, the like personality tests, like the Enneagram thing, like, do you line up in this way? I don't think that's not as helpful for me personally as something like talking about gender roles and yeah, the stuff that you talk about with security, rest, all that. I think that might have been, yeah, just more important to me personally. But yeah,
well, it's not just you personally. I mean, gender distinction is key according to the New Testament. And that's what the New Testament talks about when it talks about romantic relationships. It talks about gender distinction.
Yeah.
So you read these Christian books on relationship, and they tend to downplay gender, unfortunately, or they stick it in a late chapter, you know, as obligatory. But, you know, just about every time the New Testament brings up marriage, the author makes it about gender distinction.
right.
So you got to wonder, why do the Christian books whisper about that which the apostles shout?
Yeah.
Right.
And the answer, I think, is the apostles are much wiser. Gender is a gift to cultivate intimacy and fruitfulness in our relationships. That's what we should, that's the foundation.
Mm-hmm.
True.
Well, like you said earlier, it's certainly not a small issue. It's very important for relationships. And I guess one question I had while reading this book, and this kind of came up for us when we were discussing prep for this episode last night too, is on the one hand, of course, you have modern culture, the culture we live in today. You know, obviously, feminism has kind of run amok, and there's a lot of feminist ideas floating around in the ether in terms of how women view marriage and how it can be viewed as oppressive and this kind of thing, right? And then you read what the biblical instruction is for marriage, and husbands to lead, husbands to take charge, to be in a role like that. But then historically, of course, you look at what the culture used to be like 100 years ago as well. And sometimes you had the male headship was twisted into this domineering, authoritarian type of headship as well. So those are kind of the two poles of this debate or this argument or whatnot. So how do we stay true to the Bible and not fall into cultural stereotypes, whether they be old stereotypes or new stereotypes?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say one thing that's very important is to stick with principles. Like I was saying, I don't try to set up rules that are culturally bound, but with the principles. And I think the principles kind of we apply the principles in our cultures, our different cultures, differently. But the principles are always there. And so I like Mary Kay said, one of the things is to realize that gender is always about relationship. And she was saying that it didn't make sense to her until there was someone in front of her that she wanted to love, you know, and then it made sense, then it mattered.
Yeah.
So to recognize, I think part of the reason that people fall into gender stereotypes is they don't realize that gender is about relationship. There are certain principles that the Bible gives us. It's not, you know, being a man doesn't mean going out into the woods and cutting yourself with stones or something, you know. And being a woman doesn't mean going out and shopping. You know, it has to, except insofar as those things relate to the relationship.
Yeah.
And so if you keep in realizing it's about how gender is really about how we love each other differently, then you avoid the stereotypes. It's like, I'm trying to give her something that God tells me to give her. That's not going to result in stereotypes. That's going to have me focus on the relationship, and same for her with me.
Yeah.
And then you're realizing, okay, I'm doing something, I'm loving my spouse in a certain way. And when you do that, the way the Bible says, things get deeper. You grow in intimacy, you grow in fruitfulness, and you can see it's a healthful thing. It's not an oppressive thing.
Yeah, gender is not a personality type. It's a kind of set of instructions that God gives us. It's a calling. So you can have a lot of different personalities, and those are good, and therefore a lot of different combinations. That's why the Enneagram and the personality tests are limited in their helpfulness, because God can combine people in a lot of different ways, and there could be unexpected types of men and unexpected types of women, and combined in beautiful ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we noted that too when reading through it, right? We were chatting about that last night. How you hear it all the time, or at least I think we both did call out.
Yeah.
Oh wow, opposites attract. And so when you like in whatever high school, 15, 16, oh, like, do I like her or whatever? She's kind of different. You're just confused. Like, what do you want? Sort of. But in the end, there's all sorts of different types that work together. There isn't a steady rule.
Yeah, opposites attract sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, that's just it. I know. Yeah.
Sometimes not. And you know, all this talk about all the talk that people do about love languages, really the great value there is getting people to talk to each other, and say, well, this is what I like. Great. You're actually talking about the other person and what they like. That's the main value in that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you don't think that's, other than talking about it, you don't think there's a ton of value in the love languages theory? Is it more about the security and rest ultimately?
I like to stick with the Bible's categories. I think we don't need to then correct for something else.
I don't know.
I think
I don't mind the love languages, but
yeah, they're fine. But I would say the chief value in that discussion or that categorization is getting you to focus on your spouse and what it is that makes them tick. That's, you know, so those are ways maybe that you can explore about how to secure someone or how to give them rest.
Yeah. Okay. Any advice on how long people should date, particularly Christians? Or is it situational?
Yeah, I think that it depends. The older you are, the more serious people tend to be about getting married, and so dating might be shorter. There's I think it depends on different factors. Well, what would you say about how long people
it's often, if you've been dating a while and you're older, you may have things in order and be able to get married quicker. Like my sister and brother-in-law they dated for 3 months, I believe.
Okay.
Right. But our children met someone much earlier, had to wait 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah, I would say it also depends on experience in dating.
Yes.
Like if you have gone through this a number of times and you've broken up, say, 6 or 7 times, I think you meet someone with whom
really working.
These things are working, then you tend to be like, okay, I get it. I know this is good. So there might not be as much time needed in dating. So it depends.
I think the reason Lucas asked that is because I think, at least on social media, Christians have this people think that Christians just date for like 6 months and then they're married and they get pregnant right away or whatever. Like, So I think that's why he was asking that, because yeah, I think people have that stereotype a little bit about Christians, but then I think about us, and we didn't date for that long, I think 8 months.
Mhm.
And then we had a 6-month engagement, which I thought was like reasonable, but I had some friends that were, wow, that is crazy fast.
That's normal. That's
Yeah.
I'd say that's about average.
that's pretty good. That's pretty normal, I think.
Because
what you
I think,
guys-
yeah, you want to have enough time to go through things like what your book is talking about and make sure that you're making a serious commitment with
Yeah.
understanding and with the right attitude and for the right reasons. But
Yeah.
at a certain point, you've learned all that and now you're just waiting. So you may as well just get married.
That's right.
Yeah, sometimes it has to do with circumstances and job relocations and things, so it can vary. But yeah, a friend of mine is trying to get me to do a dating app
Okay.
based on this book, where you go through these phases of kind of exploration in these things, and you don't unlock the next phase until you complete until you answer the question. Like this, you think then you can go to the next one. And have you met the family?
Yeah.
So it's sort of like a video game. I'm thinking, yeah, that would be pretty fun. We'll
That would
see.
be cool.
That'd be a good way to engage the culture.
Yeah, no kidding.
Absolutely.
Nice.
When in Rome, use dating apps.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. I think I'm all out of questions. You got anything? Yeah, you're good. Okay. Any final parting thoughts on dating that you want to leave our listeners, young or old?
Well, I have to say, I'm so glad I met Mary Kay.
Thank you.
It was wonderful.
Yeah.
And I couldn't be able to talk about this or have any kind of wisdom to say without what I've learned through trying to love her.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah, people need encouragement to go, that God loves them, and they should. Sometimes people need encouragement to keep dating, and yeah, because
I think that for people who are in the situation of a dating situation, you have to take the long view and realize the reason that you're single right now is for you to understand the love of Christ in your life. And so there are reasons that God has you where you are right now.
yeah,
And as you do that, He'll walk with you through this process, and just allow Him the time for the story to unfold.
yes.
Wonderful. Well, I just want to thank you for joining us and for lending us your time and expertise on this important topic. Anyone wants to get the book, once again, it's Dating with Discernment, Sam Andreades, 12 Questions to Make a Lasting Marriage. You watch on YouTube, I have it right here. So check it out. It's available probably wherever books are sold. Is that correct? Amazon? Yeah, anywhere?
Yeah, Amazon generally.
Yeah, that's where everyone goes.
I don't know where people buy books anywhere else, but yeah, it's in different places. But there's also there's an audio version where they got a guy in kind of conversational way to read it, if that's the way you ingest books as well.
We actually did, yeah. I bought the physical. I bought the physical, and then I only got partway through it, and then it's just hard to find the time to sit down. So you have a commute.
Sure. Yeah, do it on the commute.
Yeah.
But hey, it's been a lot of fun talking with you too. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
No problem. Thanks to our listeners for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time on Real Talk. Till then, see you later.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Real Talk. We really appreciate you taking the time to listen or watch the show. If you want to send us your feedback, and we'd love to hear it, please email us at reformedrealtalk@gmail.com. If you want to find us online or social media, we got a lot of great content there. Just search Reformed Real Talk and we should come right up. This show is created and produced by myself, Lucas Holtvlüwer, and Tyler Vanderwood, and our wonderful podcast manager who does all the editing is Mariah Tamiga. So we're really thankful for her contribution to the show as well. That's all for now, folks. Thanks for watching or listening, and we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.